My name is Teresa Holt, and I'm 52 years old. I was folding laundry in the guest room when I found the text that shattered every bone in my soul. The phone wasn't mine. It wasn't even left out in plain sight. It had buzzed under a pillow on the bed, like it was trying to stay hidden. I don't usually snoop, but something about the way it vibrated made my heart freeze. It was my husband's ringtone, but the phone wasn't his. It was Layla's, my daughter-in-law. I picked it up. I shouldn't have. I know that, but when your gut screams louder than your conscience, you listen. The message read, "Last night was incredible. Still thinking about the way you kissed my neck when she was just downstairs." My hands trembled. I stared at the screen as if it had slapped me. For a moment, my mind rejected it completely. I thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe it wasn't about me. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe then the sender's name appeared in bold, Rick. My husband of 30 years, and Layla, my son's wife. The woman I welcomed into this family with open arms. The woman I defended when others called her manipulative or too perfect. The woman I trusted to carry my legacy forward with my only son. They weren't just sleeping together. They were laughing about me while doing it. And worst of all, this text was dated 6 days ago. 6 days before, Rick and I were set to sign the final divorce papers, a quiet, mutual ending we had agreed to after years of emotional distance, but still with respect. At least that's what I thought. Turns out, while I was preparing to part with Grace, they were screwing in my house. I stood there for a long time, phone in hand, heart burning like it had swallowed acid. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't storm into the living room and confront them like a scene from some made-for-TV drama. No, I did something far worse. I said nothing. I walked out of the room, put the phone back where I found it, and finished folding the towels with the precision of a machine. Rick was watching football in the living room. Layla was in the kitchen, humming to herself, probably replaying the night she betrayed me under my own roof. They didn't even notice me walk past. That night, I made dinner. I set the table. I laughed when Rick told a story. I complimented Layla's new dress. I even offered to do the dishes, and all the while, I memorized their faces, how easily they lied, how effortlessly they kept the secret alive. But I saw the signs now. Every time Rick looked at her just a second too long. Every time Layla giggled and touched his arm. Every time she wore perfume that wasn't hers before. I'd ignored it because I trusted them. Because I loved them. Because it never even occurred to me that the two people closest to me would choose each other behind my back. But now that I knew, I started watching. The next morning, I placed a small audio recorder behind a bookshelf in the den. Rick and Layla always had their morning chats, there when they thought I was in the garden. That same day, I found a small lipstick stain on one of Rick's undershirts. It wasn't mine. I hadn't worn lipstick in weeks. It was her exact mauve color, the one she wore when she wanted to feel fancy. I started keeping notes, times, locations, phrases, glances. I wasn't planning to use them yet, but my silence wasn't weakness. It was strategy, because here's the thing they didn't realize. I may have been quiet, but I wasn't blind, and I wasn't going to lose my dignity chasing two cowards around with screams and accusations. No, I would let them hang themselves in their own words, in their own behavior until the noose tightened naturally. That week, I played my role perfectly. Rick and I finalized the paperwork for our divorce. I didn't raise a single issue, didn't contest the asset division, didn't fight over the house. I let him think he was winning, that he'd escaped with the young, desirable daughter-in-law while the old wife bowed out quietly. Layla continued smiling in my face. I watched her closely. She thought I was stupid. She believed I was fading into the background, but I caught the flickers of guilt when I looked her in the eye too long. The way she paused just slightly when I hugged her good night. Somewhere deep inside, she knew I had changed, but she didn't know how much. I started recording phone calls. I placed a second hidden camera in the garage where they often shared quick, heated conversations. I didn't need all this for legal reasons. I needed it for satisfaction. I needed to see the truth again and again until my pain turned into fuel, and it worked. By the end of the week, I had everything, their texts, their videoed meetings, their late night whispers caught on tape. I even recorded a phone call where Rick told Layla, "Once this divorce is done, we won't have to sneak around anymore. He had no idea how wrong he was. You see, I wasn't going to expose them right away. I had something else in mind, something slow, surgical, cruel in its elegance, because tearing someone down is easy, but watching them crumble thinking it's their fault, that's real revenge. I pretended not to know because I needed them to believe they were untouchable. Because once you make a traitor feel safe, they reveal everything, and I had just started watching. The morning after our divorce was finalized, I made Rick breakfast, not out of habit, out of calculation. I slid eggs and bacon onto his plate like a woman, still tethered to her routine, still clinging to scraps of love. He looked surprised, maybe even guilty, but I smiled, kissed his cheek, and poured his coffee just the way he liked it, 2 sugars, no cream. I had never been so calm in my life. Layla walked in 10 minutes later, barefoot, wearing a t-shirt that wasn't hers, Rick's shirt, my ex-husband's shirt. She froze when she saw me. I watched her eyes flick from the plate of food to the hand I still had on Rick's shoulder. I gave her the warmest smile I could fake. Morning, sweetheart. Coffee. She mumbled something, nodded, and sat down across from us like a child caught stealing cookies. I could almost see her mind racing. Why is she still here? Why is she being nice? I wanted her confused, because confused people make mistakes. That day, I didn't just play the role of a loving ex-wife and doting mother-in-law, I perfected it. I cooked, I cleaned, I offered Layla advice about her career, even told her I was proud of the way she supported my son. She looked like she might vomit when I said it. I leaned in close and whispered, "You're like the daughter I never had." She actually flinched. That's when I knew the cracks were forming. I didn't want rage, I wanted unraveling, quiet, irreversible unraveling. I began laying little traps. One night, I left a necklace Rick had given me on the kitchen counter, the same necklace I'd seen Layla wear once when she thought I wasn't home. The next morning, it was gone. I checked my camera footage. Layla had taken it and stuffed it into her purse like a thief stealing something that wasn't hers again. Another time, I accidentally left a receipt from a couples therapist in Rick's sock drawer. He never said a word, but that afternoon, I overheard Layla in the garage whispering, "She knows something, Rick. She's not dumb." He brushed it off. "She's just sad. She'll move out soon." Sad, no. I was studying them. Every glance, every lie, every nervous twitch became a breadcrumb in my plan. I watched them so closely that I began to predict their behavior. I knew when Rick would sneak calls on the porch. I knew when Layla would pretend to go grocery shopping but detoured to a hotel on the edge of town, room 213. I had the bill. I even had the license plate from the security footage. And the whole time, I played dumb. I've been thinking. I told Rick one afternoon maybe I should move into the guest house for a little while, give you both some space. His face lit up with relief. That might be. Good, yeah. Layla smiled too quickly. "Only if you're comfortable, of course." I held her gaze. "I'd never want to be in the way of your happiness." She looked like she couldn't tell if I meant it or not. I lived for that, so I moved out, sort of. I packed a few bags, filled the fridge with pre-made meals, and said I needed a break from the city. I told them I'd be staying with a friend an hour away. In truth, I was staying 2 blocks over in a short-term rental. One with a perfect view of their backyard and access to the same neighborhood gossip circle Layla once called pointless hens. Oh, how those hens sang for me. Within days, I learned more than I expected. Turns out Layla had a reputation. I dismissed it before the flirty behavior, the awkward silences when she walked into a room. But now the pieces fit. I learned from one neighbor that she'd once been caught flirting with another married man on our street. Another told me she had boundary issues and was ambitious in all the wrong ways. I smiled politely and made mental notes. One night, I snuck back into the main house not to confront, but to collect. I used my spare key and moved like a ghost, retrieving the hidden cameras and voice recorders I'd placed all over the house. I uploaded everything to an encrypted folder and labeled each file like a case investigator. Layla Garage Confession, Rick Bedroom 6 p.m., Affair Phone Proof. They were still in the house, unaware, watching TV. I stood in the hallway and listened to them laugh, and that's when the thought hit me. They weren't just traitors. They were proud of it. They believed I had faded into the past. That my kindness was weakness. that my silence meant defeat, but they forgot who I was before I was their victim. I wasn't just a wife. I was a strategist. I had raised a family, built a business from scratch, navigated a crumbling marriage, and still managed to keep everyone afloat. I had survived miscarriage, bankruptcy, cancer scares, and now betrayal. And I hadn't even flinched. No, I adapted. I became their shadow, their echo, their mirror. Every time they looked happy, I stepped closer to the next stage of my plan. Every time they thought they had won, I was building the trigger, because they were about to learn what real humiliation felt like. And the first domino would fall with a name neither of them expected. My son. I sat in the car outside my old house, now their house, and stared at the warm glow coming from the living room window. Through the sheer curtains, I could make out silhouettes, laughter, movement. Probably Layla trying too hard to be the perfect little housewife now that I was officially gone. My name was still on the mortgage, but the title had shifted, and so had the power. Because while Rick thought he'd won his freedom and Layla thought she'd claimed her prize, neither of them realized that I was the one who had walked away with the most valuable thing of all, control. The day we signed the divorce papers, Rick barely looked at me. He seemed distracted, fidgety, like he had somewhere better to be, and I had a pretty good guess where. I wore a blue dress that hugged my figure just enough to remind him what he was losing. Not out of desperation, just punctuation, closure. Let the last image of me be power, not pain. I hope we can remain civil. I said as I shook his hand. He blinked. "Yeah, sure, Teresa. I mean, it's for the best." I nodded, holding his gaze. Absolutely, the best, because that was the last time Rick Holt would ever look me in the eye without fear, and I made sure of it. That same evening, I triggered the first move in my plan. I mailed a package. Just one, plain brown envelope, no return address. Inside, 6 high. Resolution screenshots from the affair. One image of Rick and Layla kissing in the garage. One of Layla sneaking into his bedroom at 1:12 a.m. And one that still made my blood freeze, a text Layla had sent that said, "Can't wait until she's gone for good. We'll have the whole house to ourselves." That package wasn't for Rick. It wasn't even for Layla. It was for my son, Ethan, my only child, the man Layla had married 3 years ago in the backyard of that very house, beneath white roses and fairy lights, while Rick walked her down the aisle because her father had passed. The irony was sickening, but I didn't tell Ethan face to face. I couldn't. I knew how much this would break him. So I let the truth speak for itself, silently, coldly, undeniably. Then I waited. The next 2 days passed in eerie silence. I didn't leave the rental house. I barely slept. I kept my phone on loud, waiting for the call I both dreaded and needed, and when it came, it wasn't Ethan's voice I heard first. It was screaming, raw, primal screaming, muffled through the speaker as if the phone had been dropped mid-chaos. Then his voice shaking, furious, devastated. "Mom, is it true?" I closed my eyes. "Did you get the package?" He didn't answer directly, just breathed into the phone like the world was collapsing around him. Then he whispered, "Tell me this isn't real. I wish I could." I said softly. A long silence followed. Then, "He was supposed to be your husband. She was supposed to be my wife. I know." He hung up without another word. That night, the house exploded. Not literally, but emotionally, spiritually, socially. I stayed parked 2 houses down and watched from the dark. Around 8 p.m., Ethan's car screeched into the driveway. He stormed inside without knocking. The lights flickered in every room. At one point, I saw him throw something out the front door. I later found out it was Layla's suitcase. And then came the part I didn't expect. Rick came outside chasing Ethan, and Ethan punched him. One clean blow to the jaw that sent Rick stumbling into the bushes. Layla was crying in the doorway, barefoot and shaking, but Ethan didn't look at her. Not once. He just shouted, "You ruined everything," got in his car and drove off into the night. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just watched, because that wasn't the end. That was only the middle. You see, betrayal is a virus. Once it's exposed, it spreads. And Rick and Layla had no idea how much rot was about to surface. I began phase 2 the next morning. I sent a copy of the affair footage, all of it, to Layla's office. Not anonymously this time. No, I signed it. From Teresa Holt, the woman you thought was too stupid to notice. I knew her company had a strict family values clause in their PR contract. She was on track for a promotion that required board approval. And now her name was being whispered in every hallway, not as a rising star, but as a woman who slept with her ex-father-in-law while still married. Within 48 hours, her boss issued a formal leave of absence. Indefinite. Rick, on the other hand, tried to control the narrative. He told neighbors it was just a misunderstanding, that I was bitter and making things up, so I countered that lie with precision. I uploaded a 2-minute audio file to a private Dropbox link and sent it to every single contact in his golf club. In it, Rick clearly said to Layla, she won't say anything. She's too old and too tired to fight. By the end of that week, his membership was suspended. Donations he promised to charities dried up. Even his own sister called me and said, "I'm so sorry. I had no idea." I smiled. Neither did I, until I did. My plan wasn't messy. It wasn't loud. It was surgical. I didn't burn their house down. I just made sure no one wanted to stand in it with them. And the beauty of it, they still didn't know just how much more I had. I was still holding back the worst of it. Because their lives were falling apart, and I was just getting started. The beauty of revenge is not in how loud it lands. It's in how deep the damage runs, how silently it spreads, and how long it lingers after the fire. By the time Rick and Layla realized, they weren't just dealing with a heartbroken woman. They were dealing with a strategist. They'd already lost their grip on the ledge, and I hadn't even handed the final weapon to the person who would hit them where it hurt the most. Her name was Beverly Stratton, Layla's mother, the Southern Belle with a diamond cross necklace, a sharp tongue, and a reputation for being the moral authority in every room she walked into. For years, Beverly had treated me like some low-rung divorcee, always making passive-aggressive comments about how women should keep their homes in order, or how marriage is a promise before God, not a convenience. She adored Rick, called him dependable, bragged about how her daughter had married into a stable, respectable family. She wore our last name like a badge of status, and now her only daughter had slept with her son-in-law's father, and the entire community was starting to whisper. But Beverly didn't know the half of it, not yet, so I gave her the rest. It was a Sunday afternoon when I sent her the email. I waited until she was home from church, when the mask of righteousness was still warm on her face. The subject line was simple: ask your daughter about the garage. Inside the email was a folder of curated content, photos, audio clips, timelines, a collection of evidence so damning it didn't need explanation. No opinion, no slander, just truth, cold and silent, and at the very end, a screenshot of Layla's text to Rick that read, "God, I wish she'd just disappear already." 10 minutes after I hit send, my phone rang. I let it ring, then it rang again. Voicemail. By the third call, I answered. "Teresa." Beverly snapped, skipping any form of greeting. "Tell me this is a joke." "Oh," I said calmly. "You got it then. Is this some kind of sick payback? You doctored these. You must have." "No, Beverly, I documented them. There's a difference." She went quiet. I could hear the crackling breath through her nostrils, the engine of shame and fury stalling in her chest. My church, my friends, my husband. She began like a woman slowly realizing her social ladder had just snapped beneath her. "Check the timestamps." I said coldly, "Check the addresses, the voices. Layla wasn't just unfaithful. She was proud of it, with my husband under your nose." She tried to regain her composure. "You shouldn't be airing this out like laundry. This is a family matter." "No," I said, "it was a family. Now it's a fire." Then I hung up. That single action detonated a bomb more effective than anything I'd done before. Because unlike public shame, maternal disappointment cuts deeper. Layla had always played the perfect daughter for Beverly, polished, polite, God-fearing, and now she was the scandal. She had dismantled everything her mother built in reputation and image. Within 24 hours, Beverly unfollowed Layla on every social platform and removed all photos of her from their family Facebook albums. Her church friends began to distance themselves. She even removed Layla's name from an upcoming charity gala brochure. Quietly but publicly, in Beverly, she began telling everyone that she was blindsided and disgusted, even claimed she'd warned Layla not to marry so young. The hypocrisy was rich, but I didn't care. I wanted Layla to feel exactly what she made me feel alone and betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect her. Rick wasn't safe either. With the community now fully aware of the scandal, thanks to a second anonymous Dropbox link sent to the city council, of which he was once an honorary member, his ties began to crumble. One by one, board appointments dropped him. Sponsorships were canceled. His photo was removed from the annual newsletter of the golf club. Even his beloved Friday poker group asked him to take a break while things cooled off. But it was Ethan's silence that was the most damning. He hadn't returned to the house, not once, and that, more than any expose or leaked recording, devastated Rick, because despite everything, he believed he could somehow fix his relationship with his son. He thought maybe Ethan would come around once things died down, but I knew my boy. He had Rick's pride, yes, but he had my spine, and once you stab someone like Ethan in the back, there's no crawling back. 1 week after Beverly's world collapsed, she did something that almost made me laugh. She showed up at my rental house, in person. I opened the door and found her standing on my porch in a beige trench coat and sunglasses, like some washed-up spy. She looked exhausted. I thought we should talk. She said stiffly, "Oh, about your daughter screwing my husband." She flinched. I didn't raise her to be that kind of woman. And yet, here we are. She swallowed hard. "What do you want from me?" I tilted my head. "Nothing. You're not who I'm after." Her lips pressed together. "Then why did you send that to me?" "Because now you'll never speak her name without thinking of me." That was enough. She left without saying another word, and Layla, she moved out 3 days later. No public explanation, no Instagram goodbye. She simply packed her things in the middle of the night while Rick sat on the porch smoking cigars like he was mourning a ghost. Their fantasy had collapsed in silence, because that's what I wanted, not fire, not blood, just silence so thick it echoed. They thought I'd scream, throw things, fall apart. Instead, I handed a loaded gun to the people they loved most and stepped back. And they pulled the trigger. Some people rot in secret, others decay in public, and Rick and Layla were the latter. It didn't take long. Just a few whispers at the right dinner parties, a few emails forwarded to the right inboxes, and the illusion they had built started to fray like cheap fabric. By the time the town saw the truth, no one even bothered to ask for their side, because it was already too ugly, too tangled, too real. Rick tried to hold on. He kept going to the country club, walking around like nothing had happened. But the men he used to joke with wouldn't meet his eyes. His golf partners always seemed to have other plans. One even left mid-round after Rick arrived late, mumbling something about not wanting to get dragged into drama. The final blow came during the monthly charity fundraiser, an event Rick had chaired for 5 years. He walked in wearing a navy blazer and a forced smile, acting like the king he once was. No one applauded. No one greeted him at the door. Instead, they stared, because someone had printed out one of the photos from the garage camera. The kiss between him and Layla, time-stamped and watermarked, and taped it inside the event bathroom right above the sink. Not in the men's room, in the ladies'. Dozens of women saw it that night. Dozens of whispers followed him like shadows. He tried to laugh it off, called it Photoshop, but the whispers kept coming. A week later, the board quietly removed him from the charity's leadership page. "A need to rebrand," they said. Layla, meanwhile, lost everything faster than she could lie about it. Her leave of absence from work turned permanent. HR offered her a graceful exit, which really meant go away quietly before we go public. And her former friends, they vanished like smoke. Nobody wanted to be associated with the girl who wrecked 2 generations of one family, not even her yoga group. The same women who once toasted her engagement with champagne now crossed the street to avoid eye contact. But what hurt her most, I think, was the silence from Ethan. My son didn't block her, he didn't scream, he didn't beg for closure, he just vanished from her life like she never existed. That silence, his silence, was louder than anything I could have shouted. One afternoon, I got a text from Ethan. Thank you for not telling me with words. I wouldn't have believed you. That was it. No emotion, just acknowledgement, and it meant everything. Meanwhile, Layla tried to save face in the only way she knew how, online. Her once polished Instagram turned desperate. Quotes about growth, blurry selfies with captions like healing in progress, even a photo of her at the beach with the comment, "Sometimes storms bring clarity." But no one was liking her posts anymore. The comments were dry, her influence was dead, and Rick, he didn't understand what was happening. He kept calling Ethan, kept asking mutual friends why people were overreacting. He once even called me, just once. "Teresa," he said, his voice shaky, "you got what you wanted. We're done. You signed the papers. Why are you doing this?" I let the silence stretch so long I could feel his panic pulsing through the line. Then I said, "You thought you buried me. You forgot I'm the one holding the shovel." He hung up. That weekend, he showed up at Ethan's apartment, unannounced, probably drunk. He pounded on the door. A neighbor told me he was screaming things like, "I'm still your father." "And she turned you against me." Ethan didn't open the door. Rick sat on the stoop for an hour before the building security escorted him out. The next day, I drove past my old house. The yard was overgrown. The front light was flickering. There were no curtains in the windows. Layla had officially moved out, and Rick was living alone with nothing but memories and silence echoing through the walls. It was poetic. The same house where they laughed behind my back, where they whispered upstairs while I chopped onions below, where they smiled across dinner tables pretending nothing was happening. Now it was hollow. Stripped, they had gotten everything they wanted, each other, but the price, everything else, and they hadn't even noticed how I did it, how every piece of their destruction was built by their own hands. All I did was lift the mirror. All I did was let the truth stand in the center of the room. I never doctored a thing, never screamed or threatened or stormed into rooms. I didn't need to, because when people lie long enough, they forget which direction is down. And by the time they start falling, they blame the gravity, not the jump. One final blow came 2 months after Layla vanished from town. I received a letter in the mail, handwritten, no return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. Layla, it was 2 pages long, rambling, regretful, desperate in places. She said she wasn't asking for forgiveness, just understanding. She said Rick made her feel seen, that Ethan had been distant, that I always made her nervous because I was too perfect. I laughed when I read that. Too perfect, that was her excuse. She ended the letter with, "I hope one day you'll see I wasn't trying to hurt you. I just got lost." I folded the letter, put it back in the envelope, and tossed it in the fireplace. She didn't get to rewrite the story. They both lost everything because they gambled with the one thing they thought I didn't have, power, but I had it all along, and now I had something even better. Peace, because once the world sees people for who they really are, you don't need revenge to keep the story alive. Their own choices do that for you. I never imagined peace would sound like this. No shouting, no buzzing phones, no footsteps upstairs while I lay awake wondering if I was going crazy. Just whine through the trees outside my window, the soft hum of the kettle warming on the stove, and my own breath moving in and out, like the world had finally given me permission to exhale. It had been 4 months since I'd set it all in motion. 4 months since Rick lost his friends, his social life, and the respect of our entire community. 4 months since Layla disappeared from our town without a trace, leaving behind only gossip and echoes of her failure. And 4 months since I walked away from the ashes of the life they thought they had stolen from me, and burned. I sat on the porch of the lake house I'd bought with my portion of the divorce settlement. No one knew I had moved up here, no one but Ethan, and that was exactly how I liked it. Quiet, clean, fresh air, and no ghosts in the walls. Some mornings, I still wake expecting it all to be undone, that I'll check my phone and see a text from Rick acting like everything is normal. Or that Layla will post some photo of herself smiling, captioned with some fake inspirational quote like she used to. The universe gives its toughest battles to its strongest soldiers, but it never happens. They've both gone silent, and I know why. I didn't just expose them. I didn't just let the truth slip into the right hands. I let them do the destruction. Every time they tried to lie, they made it worse. Every time they tried to shift the blame, someone else brought out another receipt, and every time they tried to breathe, the air turned heavier around them. It was a slow death, socially, emotionally. Privately, and I watched the whole thing unfold like a show I never asked to star in, but made damn sure I directed. Rick is now living in a one-bedroom apartment near the edge of town. The house we once shared, the same one he let Layla taint with her perfume and secrets, went up for sale in a foreclosure auction. He couldn't keep up with the payments, couldn't get a new job because no one wanted to work with that guy. His reputation wasn't just ruined, it was radioactive. I drove past his apartment once. I didn't stop, just watched from across the street. The curtains were drawn, the blinds crooked, a dead plant sat on the windowsill. Rick used to mock me for always keeping flowers alive in the house, called it a waste of time. Now look at him, living alone, forgotten, and for the first time in his charmed, entitled life. Powerless. As for Layla, I found out she'd moved in with an older cousin in another state. Word travels fast in our circles, even when people pretend not to talk. She deleted all her social media, changed her number, and started applying for jobs under her maiden name. She's unrecognizable now, not because she cut her hair or moved away, but because the mask is gone. That thin, polished, perfect mask she wore all those years while smiling at me across the dinner table, shattered, and the world saw what was underneath. She wanted to be seen, desired, worshipped. And instead, she became the example, the one mothers warned their sons about, the one women whispered about at brunch. I could have dragged it out longer. I still had recordings I never released, photos I never shared. But I didn't need to, because the best part of revenge isn't watching people bleed. It's watching them empty themselves out, trying to stop the bleeding you never touched. I didn't destroy them. I just stepped out of the way and let the consequences flood in. And I can't lie to you. I laughed, not loudly, not maniacally like some movie villain. No, it was small, private, the kind of laugh that comes when justice finally lands in your lap after you've been dismissed, disrespected, and underestimated for too damn long. I laughed when Rick lost his seat at the country club. I laughed when Layla's job fell apart in the same office where she once bragged about rising above small minds. I laughed when Beverly Stratton, the same woman who once told me I wasn't wife material, came crawling with shame so thick you could smell it through the phone. And most of all, I laughed the night Ethan came up to visit me at the lake house and sat beside me on the dock, staring out over the water. He didn't ask about them. He didn't even say their names. He just said, "You were right, and I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." I looked at him, my son, who they both tried to play as a pawn, who had to carry the weight of their filth on his back, and I felt something rise in my chest that I hadn't felt in months. Not anger, not grief. Pride. I had protected him, not with noise, but with silence, with patience, with precision, and now we were both free. There's something people don't tell you about revenge. It's not about the spectacle. It's not about making headlines or throwing punches or catching it all on camera. The most satisfying revenge is watching the people who betrayed you walk into their own trap, thinking it was their idea all along. And when they turn to you for help, you just keep walking. No gloating, no speeches, just peace, because you already won. Not by screaming, but by surviving.